Hi, everybody. Welcome to Live at Heart 2020 again. We're going to talk about a European music business beyond these two, there are maybe more, Covid and Brexit, and see what will happen in the future and what is the situation right now. So we have we have a panel here that going to talk about this from all over Europe, and I will leave it to Mark Bounce in a while. I just wanted to say welcome and stay tuned. There will be, after this, there will be a seminar about the American music business and see what happens there. So I leave it to you, Mark. Yes, what is going to happen? Tell us.
Cheers, Orca. So welcome to the latest in the Live at Heart conference strands. And today, as Orca said, we're going to discuss a subject that we don't seem to be able to escape from just at this moment. But today, we're also going to add a side dish of man-made confusion in adding Brexit to the post-COVID story. So the live music industry in a post-COVID, post-Brexit world. And essentially, we want to be looking at how this double whammy is going to impact on emerging artists and their ability to break in international markets. So joining me today are panelists from across Europe to give us an insight into their experiences. So my name is Mark Bounds from TIR Music. I work with Talent Coach, which is a Swedish artist development organisation based in Kalmar in the southeast of Sweden. And with me today, I have Anka, Sarah, Andy, Paul, and Vidas. Time is at a premium today for us because trying to discuss two of the biggest topics in economic impact in 45 minutes may be somewhat of a challenge. So if I could, I'll ask you to briefly introduce yourself and your organisation and give us a brief insight into current COVID live music restrictions in your territory and how they're affecting your local live industry. So Anka, could I start with you, please?
Hi, I'm Anka Lupes. I'm coming from Romanian Artists Worldwide Association, which is the organizer of the Mastering the Music Business Conference and Showcase Festival here in Bucharest, Romania. We had to cancel this edition of Mastering the Music Business, which was due in March, because March 16, a date important for me also, was the date when Romania got into lockdown. But luckily, we could organize an online edition of the conference at the end of July. So we counted the 5th edition. It was supposed to be really nice and big in a live in-person format, but well, we did it online and it turned out really well. And I think it's very important to have these online conferences, even if it's not the same thing as in-person event, because everybody needs now to learn what's happening in other territories, maybe get new ideas about what they should do in their own country with their own business. So I think keep on doing this online conferences is really important.
Absolutely. And Sarah, what's the situation in Sweden at the moment with regards to the COVID restrictions in the live industry?
Well, we are just we have had the restriction of maximum 50 people at events for quite some time now, and which was of course very severe. The constant lobbying we have here is how come it's the same amount, whether it's in a back garden or whether it's an arena. But it's been that, and a lot of people have adapted and have had no choice because we do as we're told, even if it's not the law. But this restriction with maximum 50 actually was enforced. And now we are all waiting for 7th of September. That's on Monday, when we are hoping it will be put through. They have already mentioned it in press conferences from government and from the Ministry of Enterprise, and are lobbying together with the Department of Culture that it's expected to be lifted to 500 on Monday. And then we are continuing the lobbying on how come the same amount. because of course there could be smaller venues that shouldn't have more than 49, and then we have the big arenas lobbying for, just like everywhere else, why can't we have maybe 10% of capacity? That's the situation around live right now.
And Vidas, I'll go to you because I think your experience has been somewhat different from most of ours, hasn't it, with regards to live events over the summer period?
Hello, everyone. My name is Vaidas Tatskevicius. I'm a founder and director of Lithuanian Music Business Association. I'm also running my own record label and concert agency. And our association is the organizing of music conference and showcase festival What's Next in Music, which will happen next week, but we'll come to that a bit later. And situation in Lithuania was that actually we had drive-in concerts, a lot of them happening in April and May. Since June, we had small live events up to 100 and up to 300 people. And July and August was actually where those months were full of concerts, and the amount of people that were allowed to attend the concerts were up to 1,000. And we expected all the restrictions to be lifted off by September 1st, but that didn't happen because our COVID rates started to grow again a bit. And Lithuania, since today, will be probably also included into the list of countries that you come from and you have to take quarantine because our rates are 16.1. Right now, that makes it difficult to have delegates in our conference next week, but that's the life we're having right now. And the regulations are that all the people in the concert should be with masks. Distance between them should be 1 meter, and organizer of the concert should collect contact data of people attending the concert in order to track them if coronavirus situation happens in the concert. If organizer fails to do that, so he's maximum allowed to have 300 people in the event.
Cool, thanks, Vidas. Andy, how about in the UK, or especially interesting for you because like Wales having slightly different viewpoint to the wider UK?
Yes, hello everyone. My name's Andy Jones, and I'm one of the co-founders and the music booker for the Focus Wales Showcase Festival that ordinarily takes place each May in North Wales in the UK. Alongside the annual Showcase Festival and conference that we deliver, we also act as the export office for new music from Wales, delivering showcases for Welsh artists across North America, Europe and Asia to date, with some more projects in the works when hopefully we get back to some kind of normality. The current state of play in Wales right now essentially is that there are no performances allowed. Pubs and restaurants have reopened, and with that, some of our venues have sort of remodeled how they sort of go about their business and looked at altering the interior of the venues so that they can operate more so as pubs during this phase where they can't deliver performances. But the Welsh government have been pretty well engaged with the creative sector, I have to say, throughout the whole pandemic. Weekly meetings, and right now Focus Wales, alongside a handful of other organisations in Wales, are working with Welsh government to develop a strategy, a kind of roadmap for the live sector, which will be sort of issued out in the next few weeks. It's still, as I say, in that sort of development phase, but hopefully we'll see a really sensible plan that all the venues and promoters can work to, published, as I say, in the next couple of weeks.
Paul, how's things in Luxembourg?
Yep. Well, Luxembourg, as you know, is extremely small. Just to add, your premise of a post-COVID, post-Brexit world sounds like something that Denis Villeneuve might be interested in filming, but we'll get to that, I guess. But yeah, hi, I'm Paul from Luxembourg. I work at a venue called the Rock Hall. So I'm a booker, promoter there, in-house promoter. And we also run the Sonic Visions Festival held in November each year, which is an emerging acts festival. Currently in Luxembourg, restrictions are that events have to be all seated with social distancing measures in place. However, if you have groups of people, like in a restaurant, if you have a group of 10 people together, they can be sat together and then they would be 1.5 or 2 meters away from the next group of people, but all seated. And then when you're moving around, you have to be wearing masks, which makes things, well, very, very complicated for a lot of, not just us, but also restaurants, cafes, and all that.
And is there any sign of those restrictions shifting in any time soon?
I would hope so. I mean, in my head, the sort of way forward is that with the ease of restrictions, smaller capacity places would be the first ones to be able to sort of slowly open up and do things. I would hope that before the end of the year, that would ease up a bit more. Initially, it was also until 1st of September, but that has been extended for now. And we're going on I guess, a day-by-day sort of basis. That might change next week. It might change in 3 weeks' time. So it's really hard to say at this point.
Okay, that's interesting because like the uncertainty. So the next question that I kind of like to pose to you all, and especially I might start with Vidas because it sounds like Vidas is having the day of it today. So how has the pandemic affected your plans for your events in 2020, i.e., how in the way that Live at Heart is now online and we're all sitting in our lounge rooms or our offices rather than in Örebro. And how are you looking forward to move forward in 2021? And how are you having to mitigate against the potential unknowns in the same way, Vidas, that you said about, with regards to the R rate changing? So can we kick off with you, Vidas, to kind of like say just how you're having to mitigate those daily changes?
Of course, the most difficult time was in March when the quarantine started in our country. The same day, it was 16th of March, it happened in Lithuania. So at that time, all the live concert activities just were stopped, and also different agencies, including my company, for the next like 2 or 3 weeks, we were doing nothing else than just canceling or postponing shows. So we canceled or postponed 65 shows, and the other companies also have like very, very big amount of shows canceled or postponed. Summer festivals, they waited till the last moment actually, but in May, June, they started to postpone festivals to the next year. Basically, all the ticket sales for the events that are happening in autumn or during the summer, since March 16th were stopped as well. So it was nothing else to do than just to start to do something new. So that then drive-in series started, and actually it was the really joyful experience, a hope for the industry that something can happen during this pandemic. And but also we were very glad that it lasted for more than 1 month, like 1 month and a half, because when in June, we were allowed to organize small live events. So it was the real joy and real fresh breath of air. So looking forward, so at the moment, we don't know what to expect. We are having a lot of concerts in September, but no one's having big plans for the rest of the year and maybe for the beginning of the next year. International concerts are not happening, or very, very small ones, and just people from few countries can come to Lithuania without going to the self-isolation, which allows to play the concert, because if you come to country and you have to spend 14 days, so that kills all possible tour schedule. What was really good that government agreed on the model that we suggested, that actually people they are not allowed to return the tickets until actually 30 days after the end of quarantine. There is a time frame for organizer to announce the new date of the concert. When the new date is announced, if the date is not suitable for ticket holder, he should contact organizer. And then first of all, organizer has right to suggest the voucher for the same amount of money for that ticket holder. If this doesn't work, then the money for the ticket are returned. But basically, not that many people return tickets, like, I don't know, 10-15% of ticket buyers only return the tickets.
That's cool. So people are still supporting the live industry in that sense as well, rather than demanding their money back. That's
yes.
To hear. And Anka, how are things in Romania? Because obviously you just said that you had to take your online.
Well, starting with the beginning of June, outdoor events were allowed with a maximum of 500 people, provided that the space was big enough to hold this number of people with a distancing of 1.5 meters between them, and groups or 3 or maybe maximum 4 people were allowed to stay closer. And now since September 1st, indoor venues are allowed to organize events, but with the same maximum amount of 500 people, provided again that the distancing can be held between people, and only if in their respective cities or areas the incidence of COVID infections is less than 1.5 for 1,000 people, 1,000 inhabitants. So it's a little bit tricky because you cannot plan ahead. I mean, 14 days, what happens if 3 days before an outbreak happens, then you have to cancel everything. But, well, people are trying to deal with these new regulations that were issued like 3 days ago. And we'll see what happens. Anyway, it's a good moment for, as we were discussing yesterday, it's a good moment for small and medium acts to get out there and play, because they can do these shows with small amounts of people. Big shows are not sustainable with a few hundred people. The cost will never be covered, especially now when the costs are growing with all these safety measures that each promoter has to take. So yeah, we'll see what happens. For the next year, I guess the thing we are going to plan for our conference will be a mixed scenario, live and online. I mean, if it's possible, we would love to have all the speakers live in person at the conference, but if not, we will only have the Romanians and the ones that can travel, and the other ones we will have online on big screens or somehow like this. I think it's the best way to do it. I mean, to plan it, because our conference is due to be in March again.
Cool. And Andy, you obviously have lived through the having to postpone this year's live event and moved it back. And tell us about how you kind of came to that conclusion with regards to what you've ended up on for 2021 for Focus.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's an interesting one. I did a lot of traveling at the very start of the year. So January through to pretty much the 1st of March, I went everywhere, and increasingly with each trip that I made, the conversations were more serious about, that we're going to have to cancel our events that are coming up. Starting with Eurosonic, where it was a topic of discussion. Within a couple of weeks at Celtic Connections, it was a bit more serious. Then I went to an event in Japan, in Okinawa actually specifically, and things were very serious at this point. This was mid-February, I think it was. And it really contrasted with how we were discussing it in the UK. Like it was like we were pretending it wasn't a thing at that point in the UK by comparison to how seriously it was being taken in Japan. Then I went to an event in Russia where, like, from Japan pretty much straight to there. And then in Russia, it was like it wasn't a thing, but that was the narrative that was out, in the media in Russia. It was like, no, we don't have this problem, sort of thing. But lo and behold, I landed then, I think it was 1st of March, and it was within a few days, South by cancelled. Now, we were taking 7 bands from Wales to South by Southwest. So I spent a few days untangling that. And obviously, throughout that whole process, that sort of puts a big spotlight on the problem that coronavirus is bringing to the table for the music industry. So within a few days of, doing our best to untangle the problems of cancelling South by in terms of helping artists with flights and hotels that they've booked and all of those things, and our own flights and hotels, we realised that there was very little hope that we'd be able to deliver Focus Wales in what at that point was just a couple of months away. It just seemed, highly unlikely that this thing was going to be fixed. Obviously at the time, it's easy to say with hindsight, I guess, but at the time, nobody kind of had a clear idea of how long this thing would last, except for a chap we work with who's a consultant to the organization, helps us with if we're going for a big government bid, he's a guy we'll consult with on how to put it together and whatnot. So it's somebody we trust. He's a retired doctor, and he at that point was geeking out on all the doctors forums, and he was like, guys, you've got to cancel this. They've got to lock down for at least 3 months. And there's no guarantees with that. So he was correct about the initial phase and what was coming. So we cancelled, gave us some sort of space to assess things. And then, by the time we got to June, what we'd done is that we kicked our event on to October. We'd salvaged 99% of the program. And by the time we got to June, we realized that it was going to be impossible to deliver the event in what would have been just like 4 weeks from now. And again, it was a really wise move because there'd be no way that we could deliver that event in the UK at that point. So at that point, what we realized, having been involved in meetings with Welsh government on a pretty regular basis, we realized how this was developing on a sort of policy level, and that we were looking at a phased return to the live sector, and for the live sector, and that there would be a gradual easing of the controls, but that could take months and months. And looking at next May, we just realized it would be plausible that we'd kind of be the guinea pigs if we went with May 2021. So we decided to move our event furthest from harm as we see it, and put ourselves in the autumn next year. So we're going to be early October 2021. And it's hard to be confident because there are still so many unknowns. But as I say, we feel that gives us the best chance of being able to deliver the event as close as how we would like to, because I just don't think social distancing at shows is a thing that can work. There have been a few pilot events in the UK. Financially, it's not viable, but just in terms of the whole experience for people and artists, it just doesn't work. I'm not convinced it works anyway. So we're going with October. Hopefully at that point, what social distancing restrictions, limitations are in place are minimal. But that's me being optimistic. We'll just have to see, I guess, how things progress.
But to mirror what Anka said earlier, you are having a degree of hybrid, aren't you? You're introducing some kind of digital platform, for online focus.
Yes.
Focus now, aren't you?
Well, yeah. So what we've done in the meantime, I mean, the whole spirit of Focus Wales is to provide this platform for, and in the first instance, for talent coming through in Wales to the music industry from across the globe. We've developed over 10 years into an international festival with lots of international bands coming in also, but primarily it's to help the emerging new waves of artists coming through each year. So, we just said to ourselves in June when we were kicking the festival on again, we were like, well, what can we look at in the meantime? Is there something that we can do that would make ourselves useful to our music community? So we thought, well, we could do an industry connector. We could look at all the things that we could do online, and the more we explored it, the more we realized there's actually quite a lot we can do online. We can bring people together who are experts in monetizing YouTube accounts, and sync experts, and all the things beyond live that are that artists can be looking at right now. And I'm really excited by what we've been able to put together for it. Out of Focus will be happening over the 21st and 25th of September. So just in a few weeks' time, and yeah, we've, as I say, it's a lot of practical conversations, focusing on key areas. We've got a panel about well-being. We've got panels with bookers, with agents. Yeah, we're covering quite a lot, really. And we've also got Dave Stewart from the Eurythmics in conversation with the guys from Tract, talking about how that technology can offer artists the opportunity to collaborate internationally, which I think is quite an interesting opportunity right now, considering we're all stuck at home for a lot of the time.
Absolutely, and that's almost like a perfect segue into my next question. So, are real life events and virtual events mutually exclusive now, or are we looking at a reframing of the live experience as we know it? And if so, what technologies are you looking at working with, and what technologies are you excited that bring a good experience to both the consumer but also to the artist as well, to allow them to find global audiences in a way that not having access to live performances at your festivals is doing now? So for that, Sarah, can I ask you to kind of lead, because obviously Stockholm Music City is a music and tech hub, so presumably a lot of your teams have kind of like really dug into how we can answer that question.
Yes, not only dug into, but already have a lot of, we were amazed at how many solutions are already there that have not been used. As some of you may know, we've had a very successful hackathon that we we initiated together with some of you here and most of Europe. And it became a huge success of 450 teams entirely working on hacking online monetization. Apart from, we realized very quickly, we launched this in March, that we needed to map what was already existing as well. So we actually included a fast track since there were companies already owning their own platform. And of course, the issue we wanted to stay away from is that everything becomes YouTube for free, again, putting the artist in a situation where they provide, creators providing a lot of entertainment and using the big commercial platforms, YouTube, of course, without even having any type of monetization. So basically, to make a very long story shorter, there are so many companies that have solutions for this. So now it's just, how do we spread this? How do we adapt? I agree with what Andy and several of you, of course, are saying. We all feel nothing can replace live at this stage, in at least for a long time. We will still want live. But to go back to your initial part, is it one or the other? I absolutely think that this is a change that will last. I think the advantages we are seeing are things like, look at Tomorrowland, where artists who couldn't normally perform were part of the event. And I really, really hope that in real life events we'll be able to have these platforms as a complement, and specifically for monetization. Because if you can sell 1 million extra tickets for 10 euros each, of course, needless to say, that's fantastic. Hope that answers some of your questions, but I'm happy to share some of these companies. We have companies like Void, VOYD, not to be mistake together with a bike, but they are a fantastic platform where you already can monetize. They are still at a startup, early stage startup, but they are already there and have a platform. You can put in your event, you can add free passes, you can do everything. And of course, this is good both for organizers and an artist. Then we have amazing, what you also were talking about, I think it was Andy, with ELK, the My Music Labs that started in Sweden. It's amazing that they're, I don't know if any of you have, my fellow panelists have seen what they are doing, but you really cannot believe that you are co-creating in this way. Same with a company called Soundation. I can go on and on, as you know, Mark. It's just, as you hear, I have a very positive view on technology, And I really, and I have a huge heart and believe in the real life experience. I've myself been on stage. Nothing beats the contact with the audience both ways, but it's such a great compliment that I feel we should have implemented a long time ago. That's my view.
Absolutely. And Paul, from a promoter perspective, essentially, but then also from the promoter of a showcase festival, do you see the hybrid model as the future, realistically, the realistic future that you're facing? And if so, or if not, how accessible do you find these technologies to the emerging artists that we're all looking to kind of help promote at the moment?
Yeah, I totally believe in it has to be complementary. And to some extent, people that will go to a live show, it exists already. For example, we have some artists that will play and then the show will be recorded and then they can buy a recording of the show, you know, in a smaller extent, an audio recording of the show. I think this will extend at some point to maybe almost like film production crews going on tour with certain bands that will be able to essentially film that evening that the audience experienced that night, which they can sell on to that audience, and also make available online to people who would have liked to go to see a show if a show was sold out, for example. And I truly think that these technologies are very important to also document what the live experience is, especially in times like these, so that we can also have a strong position towards government and legislation to say that, look, these events, this live experience is, well, for me, it's fundamental to my life, but it's very important, not only job-wise, economics-wise, but to the happiness of people, I think, and being able to see these things. And if people are not able to see what these things are, I think you're losing out to some extent. And we're seeing this now because nothing is really happening. I'm not saying we have to bring back live concert DVDs because most people buy them, might watch them once, if at all. But I believe it's an important step that will complement and also generate additional revenue and more business and new businesses ultimately. And it's a change that we have to take and, you know, go full steam ahead, I guess. But it won't replace the experience. It will be complementary.
Absolutely. So it's, again, very much the same view that we've had to take to a lot of technologies, that we learn to work with it and treat it as our best friend rather than treating it as the monster that's coming over the hill, I guess. And Anka, with regards to Romania, how are you integrating new tech into your live experiences? And again, to kind of like look at how accessible to emerging artists you feel that technology is, and whether we are yet able to cut through the noise using tech for an emerging artist in the same way that a mid to large artist might be able to utilize it.
Well, even if I also agree with everybody else that online should complement live in whichever form it will come in the future, I also think that online has to bring something extra, not just show people what's happening in the venue, because being at home or wherever, you cannot have the same feeling. So tech should be online, should bring something extra to the people accessing it. In Romania, for example, really quick after the lockdown, one of the the leading ticketing platform has launched a video platform that you could use for online shows and also for monetizing the online show. Because as Sarah said, okay, the online showing online it's okay, but then you have to monetize it. You cannot keep doing it for free because it will harm the business in the end. I mean, at the beginning it helped artists to be close to their audiences, but if you keep doing it for free, then the audience might not be that interested in paying to come to see the shows or to watch the online shows. So we need to be very careful on that side.
Promotion doesn't pay the mortgage, does it?
Exactly. I mean, okay, you can promote yourself at some point, but you don't have to exaggerate it, because otherwise you're gonna fall on the other side and it's not very sustainable.
And I'm going to jump in there actually, because the word unsustainable leads us nicely onto the second man-made confusion that we're all facing at the moment. Is a case of Brexit on top of a COVID experience as well. So obviously, two of us on this panel are kind of sitting here saying, I'm sorry, don't blame us, it wasn't our fault. But unfortunately, that's not going to cut any ice. So how are you all working with the uncertainty of how reciprocal touring might work, given the uncertainty of any potential trade deal? Yeah. So what additional factors and costs are you having to consider with regards to planning your events for next year, both with regards to whether you want UK talent on your stages, and similarly whether you see UK stages, as a platform that you expect your artists to be working towards next year? And rather than actually start with the UK perspective, I'm actually going to go the other way around if I can. So Vidas, what's your thoughts with regards to how this Brexit scenario is going to impact both Lithuanian artists into the UK, and then similarly UK artists coming out to play your festival stages?
Yeah, I think at the moment the main problem is coronavirus, and it's not that big. Brexit is not that problematic thing, and I think the deal between UK and Europe, when it will be finalized and all the agreements will be made, I think it should happen by 1st of January. Then we will know for sure what new obstacles will appear, but I don't think it will be very problematic for the bands who see UK as their market. So it's not the main problem to go to play concerts, to make tours. I don't think it will be very problematic to have UK acts playing in Europe, and in my case in Lithuania. But what did happen actually, for quite a long time, Lithuania had a lot of people going abroad to work, to study. We had quite a lot of immigrants going to UK, and this year actually the statistic shows that more people return than leave the country. So this might be direct impact of Brexit. So we might have a lot of people watching concerts in Lithuania when they came back.
That's really interesting. So Andy, can I get a UK perspective, because obviously you're going to be impacted in the additional costs of potentially, I have to add, having international artists playing at your festival, and similarly as the export agency for Wales, the challenges that you might potentially face with Brexit on top of a post-COVID.
Well, we won't pick up that cost as our event. I mean, we've had experience for years of artists coming in from elsewhere in the world, whether it's from Africa or South America or Asia, and like coming in for Focus Wales is fine. We're a government-supported industry showcase event with a conference component, which means you can come and showcase at Focus Wales without the need for a Tier 5 work visa. It only becomes complicated if then you want to go and play a couple of pub shows in Liverpool and Manchester because you've heard about Liverpool and Manchester and you want to go and play in those places. Well, that's going to be an extra £244 per musician if you want to do that. Now, on a personal level, as I say, on a personal level, I don't think it will impact Focus Wales, because I think the desire to sort of access the UK music market will still be there. And we have 5,000 artist applications each year. It's a strong desire to get to our event. But equally on a personal level, I think it's really disappointing for the wider UK that we're not going to have these, that there will be artists who would have stuck around and toured for a couple of weeks each year around our event, around the Great Escape, around Liverpool Sound City. And, they probably won't do that now because of these prohibitive costs. And I think, in terms of the cultural impact was huge and is huge. And I think we will miss that, having really exciting international artists coming to these shows enriches our lives. It brings something else to the table, and it's really sad that, you know, many of those artists might decide not to do that in the future. But hopefully, when we really do get the detail of how it will work, coming to the UK and equally going from the UK into Europe to tour, maybe we can, and I alluded to this in our call yesterday, that perhaps we can have some kind of more straightforward process, such as how it works in Canada. If you want to go and tour in Canada, you know, it's basically like, so long as you don't want to stick around more than 6 months, you know, you can go and tour there. It's, the paperwork is minimal, the costs are minimal. So I'm really hoping there can be a common sense approach taken to it, because culturally, as I say, there will be a negative impact, and economically there'll be a negative impact too, because ultimately, I think across the year, you'll see thousands less musicians sticking around for those couple of weeks where they're staying in hotels and eating in the restaurants. So I think, you know, a sensible conversation needs to be had, and I really, really hope it does happen.
Absolutely. So it seems from what we're saying today is that, like, we're all fairly confident that the industry can keep leveraging governments to kind of saying we can find solutions. Yeah, we can find, yeah, at the end of the day, you're event organisers, you're the experts in putting events on. So you can inform the government on what you can do safely, because you don't take risks. That's, yeah, you don't take risks with people's health. And similarly with the talent as well, it looks like we will hopefully find ways of ensuring that international talent can still cross those borders. Obviously in Europe, you can travel, yeah, as freely as you like. And I guess it's down to the UK to kind of industry to work with the European industry to work out how we can do it. So just to wrap up, because I know we're running very short on time.
Yeah, sorry.
With regards to booking talent for next year for your festivals, can you all briefly just kind of give a quick tip to any artist who is watching us now on how they should make contact for you, and what would be the one thing that would impress on you to book an unknown artist to you who you haven't been able to see live and book them for your festival next year? So can I start with you, Anka, and I'll run around very quickly if I can.
Yeah, well, exactly, for the next year, we kept the same lineup as this year, because our conference was and Showcase Festival was canceled 1 week before. So all the artists coming from abroad were, you know, booked flights and whatever. So we felt we owe to them to keep them in the lineup for next year. Obviously, if everybody wants to come and if it's going to be possible. But basically, for artists wanting to come to Bucharest and play the Mastering the Music Business Showcase Festival, we are looking obviously to the music and to the live performances. And even if there were no conditions this year to have live performances, maybe they could, you know, just shoot something at their rehearsal space or wherever, you know, just do a live video, really good in sound and image, so we can be able to assess if we want you or not in our showcase. And of course, as always, it counts a lot, the online presence, you know, Facebook, YouTube, everything that shows us that you are an artist export ready.
The usual
really,
data.
Yeah, really preoccupied on growing your career.
Paul, what are you looking for to see from artists who you want to book for next year?
For me, it still comes down to creativity and making solid, good music. It should be well produced, of course, and, you know, videos or interesting videos that go along with it. It doesn't necessarily have to be live videos, but I've discovered some incredible acts across Europe based on through different platforms that I wouldn't have known before, that make incredible music and have great visuals and music to go with it. And without having to see them live, I want to see them live because of all these other elements, and they're still really important to me, and I think they still will be for the next or the rest of my career, I hope.
Excellent, cheers. Vidas, what is it that you would say to your band? Do this and you'll probably get booked to come and play in Lithuania.
So we select bands from INES program, and also it's possible to send the application on our website. All the information is on Facebook. What's Next in Music conference? It's happening every year in September. So next week we are having this conference. What we receive usually, and what we evaluate is the video links. So good video always helps. Professional attitude, management, and wow factor is the thing that we're looking for. Basically, we don't have a lot of bands. We try to choose usually around like between 20-30 bands, and those bands who make you say wow. So those bands definitely are part of our program.
I see you nodding, Andy, at the same time as I see Orca scowling. So
yeah, we have to. Sorry, but we have to end. We have other seminars after this, and but thank you everybody for being a part of Live at Heart, and thank you for everything you taught us and all your thoughts about the future and what's happening now. And I hope to see you all in person next year.
And
in some way or another.
Orca, is this available after the fact as well, so people can go back and check all the panelists, so they can contact the panelists direct? Yeah.
Yes.
Excellent. And I hope
it will be available
to be contacted direct.
In an hour or something. It will be available there.
All good. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming along on a Friday afternoon. Sorry that we had to try and cram so much into such a short space, but until we meet again in a live venue with a beer in our hand, shouting in each other's ear again, and all will be safe. Thanks very much for joining us, and I'll see you all very soon, hopefully.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Live at Heart 2020. This is a very odd year, but we are trying to do something anyway, and this is the way we can meet. So let's use all the technical advices that we have, and I'm very happy that to welcome American friends to talk about how this music industry, live music industry, will affect the COVID will affect the live music industry. We just had a discussion about Europe, and now we're moving over to United States to hear what is happening there. And I asked Drew Young to help me with this seminar, and he will be the one that are asking questions and keeping everyone in place. So very welcome to you. I would like you to introduce yourselves when we start this, and I will turn my camera off and leave the space to you, and I will be back later. Welcome again, and thank you for being here.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Oke. I appreciate your time. Really nice to be here back in virtually in Sweden. Just to kind of frame this up here, I have been working with Oke on the Live at Heart conference for about 7 years now. And I look forward to it every year. So it's nice to be able to be here virtually. And as Oke mentioned, we do have a interesting year here, and lots of changes and lots of things going on here. And I thought that we could share some information from some of our professionals in the United States and just talk about, where we were and where we are currently, and just to kind of opine and look forward into the future and see, where we think this thing might go so that we can better plan our careers and our paths with this here. My name is Drew Young, and I am a singer-songwriter and a plate spinner, if that may not translate very well into Swedish, but which means that I have a lot of different things going on at a variety of times. And I'm also a university professor at the University of Colorado in Denver, specializing in the music industry. So I'm very honored to be here, and I wanted to take a second here. Unfortunately, one of our guests, Michelle, is not going to be able to make it. She just texted me there. They are actually shooting a video for Shannon McNally, who's an artist out of Oxford, Mississippi here. I think we've got a Southern slant here. So I thought I would let the panelists introduce themselves. Well, Scott, can I start with you? And I've known Scott for many, many years here, and curious to hear what you have to say. And if you could just tell us a little bit about, your path, your journey, and then we'll move on to Kim and Ben.
Sure, Drew. Well, thanks for having me. Welcome, everybody. Well, Drew and I met a very long time ago in Louisiana, and we were both there. I was in Louisiana for about 4 years in the film and music business over there, and opened a recording studio, and we started a festival company. We did the Hangout Music Festival, the Pemberton Music Festival, Tortuga Music Festival, and we also promoted about 1,000 shows a year. And somewhere along that path, Drew and I met, and we recorded 1 or 2 records. Drew, I can't remember, at least one. We had a fabulous time down Dockside Studios with Chef Brian. That was the funnest part of that. And so that's my path has been. I started playing music when I was a little kid, and started playing guitar when I was in college, and played in a touring band for a while, and then moved to the studio world and did some producing and some session playing, and was with a lot of good folks through my buddy Brady Blade, who's a Sweden resident. Brady Blade was over there, and left the studio business in 2012 and went into the festival business full tilt. We went down here to Santa Rosa Beach, Florida, and then we had a little baby out of the blue in 2016. So my wife asked me to kind of stay home. So I started looking at some other opportunities in music with some small theaters here, and I've been doing that for about, I guess, almost 4.5 years now. And then COVID stuff came, so I kind of transitioned into the COVID business.
Great, thank you, Scott. We'll come back to that. And so, Kim, if you got a second, just kind of introduce yourself here and talk about your experience in the music world. I know that you do lots of other things outside of music, but for right now, we're just kind of focusing on culture and entertainment and music.
Sure. Well, first and foremost, I am a law professor that runs a clinic for entrepreneurs, and we do serve a lot of musicians and music businesses and folks in the entertainment world. But as well, I am the owner and janitor of Milo Records. It is a passion more than a full-time job. And, you know, over the years, I've promoted about a dozen musicians, one of whom is how I met you. Based out of New Orleans, but now that I'm teaching in Little Rock, well, where is anywhere based out of these days? So
that's a very good point. Great. Well, thank you, Kim. So Ben, tell us a little bit about you. Ben, I'm dying to know what you got to say here, buddy.
Well, forgive me for being in transit. I pulled over, but I will be, I'm excited to be here. Thanks so much, Drew, for including me. Excited to get to know Scott. I've met Kim a couple of times and just honored to be part of this. So I guess like most of us, like most folks that have made it in the music industry for a long time end up doing lots of different things. I'm definitely one of those people. It's funny to hear Scott talk about the impact of the baby and what that does to your life. That's what pivoted my career. I think I was Mickey Hart's musical director and manager and was touring around the world. And then we had a kid. And then I, got into stopped playing the piano, stopped wanting to tour. And ever since I've just been all in management. But my background, I guess, is I'm a musician producer who got into artist management 15 years ago out of frustration that these records didn't go anywhere and people signed stupid deals. So I was frustrated, got into the business side, fast forward, and now I manage 8 artists and just it's an exciting time. It's crazy, but it's exciting in the same way. All the change is, I think, is opportunity. So excited to be part of this conversation and talk about not just the bad, but the good of what we can get out of this and how we can learn from things maybe we weren't doing so well before.
That's really great. Thank you. I appreciate your insight into that. I had a very similar conversation to this with a colleague of mine who Scott Cohen, who you may or may not know, is one of the founders of The Orchard, and his whole viewpoint on this was that, and I want to segue into this, was that essentially everything that was already in place is now on hyperdrive. And Scott, I thought I would come back to you for a second here. And how have you pivoted in this time of COVID? And what sort of silver linings do you see? And just for the Swedish people, what I mean by silver linings, or what sort of good things have happened, or what sort of positives have you seen going on in the industry right now?
Well, I think first of all, the pivot I made I got really into this when it first came out, because I've got my son, he's 23, but he had asthmatic problems. I've got my mom's in her 80s, so I got very involved, started learning about it from the get-go. And the pivot I made is that, testing is the key to bringing down infection rates and sort of opening up the country again. And so, the problem was when they started doing testing, there was long lines, people are frustrated, they're getting inaccurate results. And the reason why is because the people that were doing the testing are generally just lab people, they're just small labs like LabQuest or whatever, and LabCorp rather. And so I said to myself, wait a second, there's a whole segment of people that are out of business that know how to put people in lines, right? They know how to handle vehicular traffic, pedestrian traffic, logistics. So, and plus all these venues are closed, right? I mean, every venue's closed, every stadium's closed. So let's go to these empty stadiums, these empty parking lots. Let's bring in the best logistics teams in the world, which are people that are in sports and entertainment, live event promotion. So we started a company called Health Screening Solutions. And so we're sort of the administrators. We hire medical professionals. We test people. We use labs all over the country. But of course, we've been real focused on the music side of things, for, sort of selfish reasons, I guess you'd say. And so what I see is that, when I came up, I'm 53. So when we did bands when I was a kid, you had to go to like Olin Mills to get your picture made, and you had to have a very crude recording from a little cassette tape, and you were constantly on your phone. There was no internet. There wasn't even cell phones. I mean, and so you had to be really, really hungry. You had to be really hungry. I mean, these days we could, with this group right here, in 20 minutes, we could probably cut a demo, build a social platform, do all these things in 20 or 30 minutes, literally probably with this team. Whereas back in the day, it took weeks. So what I'm seeing is that the people that are committed and the people that have talent at the lower level of music, they're still pushing. You know, they're still pushing. It's going to sort of separate the wannabes from the have-bees. So I think that's potentially a silver lining. I think the other silver lining is that I think that once that we can open up into concerts and live music again, which we'll talk about later, I think people are going to go crazy. I mean, I think people have taken for granted going in just into a restaurant and hearing a solo artist, or going to a concert or a festival. I think people are really missing that, and when it comes back, I think it's going to come back with a real fury.
That's great. I really appreciate it. I completely agree with you as well too. This pent up demand is extraordinary right now. So, Kim, tell me a little bit about tell me a little bit about how you've adapted and any sort of positive outcomes you've seen around this.
Sure. Well, as a professor, my life hasn't changed dramatically. I'm very lucky. And in a lot of ways, it's, we work a lot from home a lot in general. So this kind of justifies it. Unfortunately, I can't say the same for the artists I work with and small businesses in general, a lot of whom have had to pivot in ways that they just never imagined having to do before. I do think there's some silver linings, like Ben pointed out. One is, the touring musician, independent musician world, small musicians have turned a lot to playing concerts on live and realizing, wow, I just made $600 without any travel expenses playing in my living room. Which in the United States, in cities like New Orleans, I'm not going to speak for Memphis, but $600 a week is kind of a normal, that's like a good amount of money for them to make. So it's been interesting, but how sustainable that is another question we can leave to another day. I will say from a legal perspective, a lot of issues have popped up. That YouTube is trying to catch up. YouTube and Facebook are trying to catch up with. So, I don't need to give anyone here copyright 101, but essentially there's 3 ways to earn income as a songwriter, and performing live concerts on Facebook has really thrown a loop, and to YouTube and then uploading these things to YouTube has thrown a wrench in the works of YouTube and Facebook, to the extent that they'll pull material off, sometimes erroneously, that they absolutely admit, and give folks a notice saying that we don't have enough humans to work through our screening process anymore. So we're relying 100% on automation. So please appeal if we made a mistake. I mean, that's an automatic announcement they're giving when they pull things. And then also, legitimately identifying copyright issues that the artists didn't realize were an issue. When, for instance, during a break in one of their concerts, they are playing some background music and, not paying a sync license. And so, YouTube has had for a long time a negotiation in, a blanket sync license that they operated fairly smoothly, but right now it's very difficult for them to catch up. And Facebook doesn't really have many screening components at all, from what I can tell as a lawyer. They're starting to catch up though, and it's been a little jerky, but they're going to catch up, because if they don't, they will get sued by all publishers, so record labels, PROs, huge songwriters. So there's going to be some catching up to do. I think live music, I personally am just really waiting for live music to come back from a mental health point of view. My husband, who's a musician, also has sort of pivoted. he had planned to become, to take a master's degree, but everyone's missing playing live. My husband certainly wasn't excited about canceling 6 weeks worth of gigs in Europe. But I do think collecting your own fans will pay off. And for those musicians who have been, really dutiful about having that phone list, that email list getting accumulated over the years, it's paying off for them now because they're able to play these live shows and collect some money on a semi-regular basis. Now Facebook and YouTube just need to catch up without pulling people's stuff off that shouldn't be pulled off. So those are kind of the major changes I've noticed.
Thank you, Kim. That's really insightful, and I want to come back to that collection side of it. So put some brain power into that because I do have some questions for you about that. So thank you, Ben. I'm going to ask you the same thing as well too. And I mean, obviously, you are in a similar situation as Kim's husband with and also some of Kim's other artists that she works with that tour Europe a lot. And also the touring is a large part of the income stream for these artists, and obviously that's not happening. So please, give us some of your thoughts on that, and then how you see some sort of positivity coming from this.
Sure. Well, I guess to start off, when I try to keep it positive here, and it's hard. Don't want to suggest that I think COVID has had a positive impact on our industry overall, but in terms of silver linings, clearly we were just a little too dependent on touring. If you look at the data, I think the Future of Music Coalition did a study a while back that showed over 50% of musicians' income was all derived from touring, and you take all that away, and it's certainly problematic, right? It's hard to survive. The benefit is when you take that away, it creates a real need. It creates a real urgency, so I can think about a couple of examples. I'll speak for my company. We've worked really hard over the last couple of months to launch, this fan club subscription model. I've never been a fan that artists, for me personally, I'm not criticizing those that do it, but I didn't want my artists to do free performances and put out their hand and ask for tips, because I notice it works once and then it gets old. Like I tipped you last week, I'm not tipping you again. I've heard your poorly recorded living room concerts already. I don't need any more of them. So it really, what we've done is built out subscription models, and I'm a big fan of the Patreon platform. Not suggesting there aren't others, but I've got 4 Patreon campaigns that are helping my artists sustain right now, where we're putting their live streams behind a paywall. And we're often promoting out to socials so that everyone sees every once in a while some free content, and then encouraging them to come in. So there's if anyone wants to study, clearly Amanda Palmer is the best, example of crowdfunding and using Patreon with her 15,000 patrons and so forth. Actually learned a lot directly from her about this, but we just launched a campaign for a band that I'm really honored to represent called Making Movies. The Latin Grammy nominated band that is doing some really creative stuff. We launched it Thursday of last week. And so their Patreon, we've put a bunch of work into this, just launched it, off to a pretty good start. And I'm hoping that these guys will be able to sustain. I've got other artists who are making a decent wage now from their bi-monthly or bi-weekly live streams. So my overall point would be, create a new model, create a different way for fans that love your artist to support you. And that old idea of patronage is certainly, I know I sound like a promoter for Patreon. I don't work for Patreon, but I think that principle is more important now than it ever has been before. So musicians need support. And do we want to have support for a month or a night or a week? No, we need consistency, right? Artists should have stable income. Artists should have retirement accounts. Artists should be setting their taxes aside quarterly, so they're not freaked out at the end of the year. At least that's what I deal with as a manager every year. So if you know that you can project 3, 4, 5, hopefully grand a month of stable fan club live stream income, then it really does change your outlook. the last silver lining I'll just mention is that we've obsessed over publishing because, I mean, everywhere from my hip hop artists to even the singer-songwriters, there's a lot of cleanup that needed to happen. This has been the year that we've finally dug in and figured out what part of our catalog is one stop that we can shop for sync easily. What are the splits that are messy from 5 years ago that we never dealt with, so we never registered the songs, and just getting everything really cleaned up. I would encourage all the artists out there to take this opportunity to get all of your business in order and register everything. In the US, you know, I'm a big fan of resources like Song Trust to collect all the global royalties for artists, big proponent of their work. And I know there's equivalents, I'm sure, in Sweden and other parts of Europe, but passive revenue is the theme of what I'm talking about. Like, you deserve it. If you're an artist putting great work out in the world and fans care about you, then you should be able to figure out how to make a career out of that without needing to tour, without needing to perform in front of people. So those are some of my thoughts on it.
I want to add to what Ben's saying. I've always been amazed over the years that there hasn't been more of a lobbying effort to the PROs against for them not being very dutiful about paying out from their blanket licenses. So in a lot of places in Europe, you know, when you play there, they ask for a set list. They report it in, the clubs pay a blanket license. And so, you know, they're like, well, we want musicians to get paid. So we report the songs in. And, you know, I'm pretty sure Memphis is pretty similar to New Orleans in that I've had musicians play thousands of gigs in New Orleans, and not one of those clubs has asked for the set list to pay royalties out, right? For the music we play over in between songs from other artists and the covers that the musicians play. Not once has a club asked for a set list. And I think right now is a time that artists should realize, you know, I really should be thinking about passive income in these times. And we really need a better enforcement to look after our rights, because, you know, even maybe folks aren't getting covered. Maybe, you know, a lot of New Orleans bands are small bands, right? And they're touring, you know, they have maybe 5,000 followers, right? But people are playing their albums. Maybe other artists aren't covering their songs, but their albums are getting played at venues who are paying a blanket license to BMI, to all the PROs, but those PROs are not paying the artists who are getting played. So, you know, at some point they're, you know, the Recording Academy and various musicians unions should think about an initiative enforcing a better royalty process to get paid out of these blanket licenses.
It's a really wonderful point. I really appreciate both of you all bringing, adding on to that. I too have taken this time to really clean up the publishing, and I encourage any burgeoning artists or managers in music industry professionals in the audience to really dive deeply into that. It's much more time consuming than people realize. I was shocked at the amount of places there are to do it with that. So thank you, Kim and Ben. So I want to pop this over to Scott here. So Scott, I'm fascinated with what you are working on in the testing capacity, and there has been a lot of positive news around being able to, and some experiments with some artists who are doing socially distant shows here. I am in Nashville currently, and I've been shocked that there is live music. And it has a lot of qualifiers around it, but I was curious if you could speak a little bit, because I think that's probably the future, is getting these venues and getting the guest as well as the artist comfortable in this new environment that we have. And just curious if you could speak a little bit about what you think that's going to look like, and what sort of things are you working on?
Sure. So we are already working with a number of bands that are in rehearsals now. We're working with a lot of them right now. And so in terms of getting a band around the country in a tour and keeping them safe, we've got that figured out, because we can put them sort of in a bubble, right? We can do continuous testing. We can figure out from a group of people who has the antibodies and who's kind of safe from infection, who could potentially get the infection. We can control where they go, what they do, their distance from the crowd, they're with their same crew kind of thing. That part of it we've got figured out. The part that still is waiting for technology and science is the audience. There are some new antigen tests that are coming to market very soon. They're at the FDA right now that will, so not to get too technical, but there's two kinds of testing. There's the PCR testing, which is the nasal swab or throat swab or now saliva. And then there's the antibody finger prick testing. The antibody testing is just for antibodies. It doesn't tell you if you have COVID or not. But that test is like a 15-minute test. It looks like a pregnancy test. You drop some blood in it and it tells you if you have antibodies, but that's not a COVID test. So there's been no rapid COVID test yet approved by the FDA. But the antigen stuff is coming along very swiftly. Like right now, there's a company that has an antigen test. So it's a throat swab, and then the swab goes into a cartridge, sort of like a pregnancy test. I hate to use that term, that's what they look like. And then in about 10 minutes, you get a result. So if that gets approved by the FDA, which is very close to happening, well, then now it's conceivable that you can bring people into a venue. And this stuff is just happening. So I said next week, but I mean, who knows? It's in emergency use authorization approval at the FDA. But that's where we're waiting on. There's a big outdoor festival in Colorado, a big outdoor venue in Colorado we all know about. They're trying to lift a concert right now. They found a lab that would come and operate at the venue, and they're going to do the nasal swab, which is the gold standard, and they're going to get results in 4 hours, and they're going to let people in. Well, our thing was, wait a minute, you're going to quarantine every single person for 4 hours? Because if people get tested and they go back in the parking lot, well, then if whoever's positive could be still spreading COVID. But if we can get a test that is accurate, has a high sensitivity level and a high specificity level, that's rapid, well, then now we can start to move people into venues, right? The other side of this coin is this whole passport idea, where you have like apps on your phone. There's lots of them out there, and you're constantly being traced and checked, and you get like this green passport. We have a really high VIP person that we take care of, and this person they're pretty successful in the music business. And they have numerous houses, an airplane, staff everywhere. We test their staff, their pilots, their hairdressers, their everybody, their family. We test them every week, and everybody has this Fitbit looking thing on. It kind of blinks, and as long as it blinks green, everybody's fine. If we test them and somebody's negative, their band turns red, and everybody they've been in contact with since the test, their band turns red. So can you do that on a mass scale? I don't know that everybody wants to be traced and tracked. So the challenge right now is not the artist. The challenge is the audience. And we live in Florida, and I got to tell you, if you came down here, Drew, to 38, it looks like business as usual. I mean, there's bands and bars. They've got dividers in front of the stage. There's no dancing. They've screwed down all the chairs and tables to the ground so you can't move them out of the way. But for the most part, people are walking around without a mask on. And, I've been in New Orleans a lot in the last few weeks, and you go there, and if you're not wearing a mask, smell across the street. But they'll come here to the beach and they'll just take their masks off and party like crazy. But to answer your question, that's the part that we're trying to figure out, is how can we get mass crowds into a venue and make sure that everybody's in that venue is COVID negative.
That's fascinating. I really appreciate you sharing that. Kim, I want to just kind of ask you a real quick question about this. So from a legal standpoint, do you see what are the complications as well as the opportunities with something like this? Do you see any?
Let's separate actual legal issues from cultural issues, first of all. It's a public health crisis, and I will fight the president to the death when I say a public health emergency does give him a lot of authority to do things he hasn't done. But it's the same reason why governors can mandate masks, and governors can mandate, that everyone gets a vaccination for, the chicken pox before they go to school, right? So governments have the authority to require all these things Scott's talking about. every single one. And you can ask a lot of law professors who will say the same. And obviously the president does too. Now, culturally, that's really different, right? I think, all of us live in the South, and we know what that means when someone is told to do something like wear a mask, right? So, from a legal perspective, public health is considered a public emergency. A pandemic is considered something that reflects on public health and safety, where a lot of rights to privacy, a lot of constitutional rights take second fiddle while that issue is being addressed. So, so many things that are actual solutions are very much legal, do not violate constitutional rights. But are you going to sell, 10,000 seats if you're like the Dixie Chicks or something? Are you going to sell 10,000 seats to people who are going to be enforced to stand in a square, 6-foot radius square, and not touch each other and wear a mask? All y'all will know better than me the practical reality of that. At this point, I've gone to less concerts than I'd like to admit. I certainly don't go to huge concerts. And even the venues I do go, they're small venues. How is that going to pencil out to open them up to sell 1/4 of the revenue they're used to selling? Unless you own the building, that's there, there's some math there that might not make sense for a long time.
You're absolutely right, Kim. And that's why, the testing has to happen. I mean, testing is the solution for everything. I agree with your first part of your somewhat political part. I agree with you 1,000%, because if we all of us wore a mask and we all social distance for a period of about a month, this would dramatically go away. Relating back to music and live performance, we have to test. I mean, we have to test, and we have to be able to test rapidly, because we can't have people somebody gets tested, the next day they come to the concert. That's not going to work. And on the legal side of things, I mean, like, for example, let's say that, we use Mickey Hart as an example. I'm a Deadhead, right? So let's say we got Mickey Hart figured out. We got Dead and Company figured out. We've got them all figured out. We're testing them right now. They're in rehearsals. We got them all done up, right? And do they really want to go out on the road to not be 1,000% sure that whatever sort of protocols are put in place by the promoter and venue aren't perfectly executed? Because if they're not, guess who's going to get sued, right? The band's going to get sued. So there's that side of it too.
Yeah, and the pragmatic reality is Boris Johnson got COVID, right? Bolsonaro of Brazil got COVID. So, many members, multiple members of the president's cabinet got COVID. So insulating people is also very difficult. And especially, can you imagine? The Rolling Stones are, they're like 100 years old. For them to get COVID is a really, really big deal. And so, to what extent, I don't know if it's a legal question as much as a practical reality. To what extent, when you have what's referred to as a super spreader event going on, can you really protect people? I don't know if people mentally are going to be there, and of feeling safe, number one, to go to a concert with that many people. And number two, the practical reality is there's still risk there when alcohol is involved, right? I'm certainly not a teetotaler or Carrie Nation over here, but, as a former public defender, all my great cases involved alcohol, right? It's a judgment issue more than anything else. It's not a moral issue. It's just really a judgment issue. So I think the practical realities make it much more difficult, I think, than the legal realities. You absolutely can require, especially in private property, you can absolutely require people to undergo a level of scrutiny before they enter your property.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing that. Ben, what are your thoughts on that? And I want to be cognizant of your time. I know you've got a hard out here at 9:45. So I want to just get your feedback on this. And how this relates to your artist and the touring potentialities.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I'm not an expert on COVID, so I think, I mean, I really just live in the music industry. You'd probably want to ask my wife questions about public health. She's a public health researcher at Emory. But in terms of the industry and my perspective as a manager that looks after artists, I can just tell you my experience. We're not planning anything for a long time. The only tour that wasn't canceled this year, which we just called off, was actually in Europe. Luke Winslow King had a solo tour, and it's just, I mean, an American getting around, getting into Europe is hard. He was going to quarantine in Ireland or UK for 2 weeks and then be able to get into these countries. It's just not right. Like, I think my approach right now, and no disrespect to Scott, I hope that everything you're working on, Scott, works out. But just for me personally, we're not trying anything. We're not planning on any touring. I think the next tours we do would be in the fall of 21 and at the soonest. I mean, the soonest that would happen. So again, we're just really being into producing content, trying to keep even the members of the bands from getting COVID. I mean, we had a big television shoot this week in Memphis that I was going to do next week that we had to pivot because the drummer has COVID. So he's staying home. So just trying to get the musicians to be able to get in front of a camera at the same time, that in itself is a challenge. And in terms of our overall philosophy and overall strategy, it's get better at promoting records. I mean, Spotify still works. Thank you, Sweden. Like, that's how we all really need to make a living. Fan clubs, subscription models, Patreon, those types of services. And obviously the publishing income that Kim mentioned earlier, there's lots of work to be done there. But I guess my perspective is just, I guess, not assuming that we're going to be doing it for a long time. I mean, I don't know that these vaccines are going to be trusted. So I don't know how long it's going to take. I really just live in the music business. I don't know about that stuff. But fall of 21, I think, would be when we would think about routing a tour the old-fashioned way. Otherwise, live streams. I mean, we have probably 20 live stream events where, thank God, there's organizations paying my artists to film and produce content. And just one other thing I'll add about that is think about the quality of the content. I think people are tired of a cell phone in someone's living room that sounds like crap. I think it's time for artists to learn how to use audio equipment, learn how to use video equipment. We all need to check out services like StreamYard and other technologies that allow people to produce kind of more polished material. So even if the bands are separated and they want to talk to one another or talk to their fans, like, learn the technology to do it at a high level. That's what I can contribute here.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's exactly, yeah. And I really appreciate your perspective on that. Okay, I wanted to open this up for questions.
Yeah.
So
there is one question. This is an American artist living in Europe, and he wants to know what's your perspective of that. What can they do? Is there what kind of advice can you get? Can you give him?
The American artist living in Europe.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is the first question.
Okay. And anybody want to take that?
Sorry.
I could try. I manage an American artist who lives in Spain. So my advice is everything I pretty much just said. I would say don't plan on touring the US for a little while until Scott figures it out. Hopefully antigen testing is happening, and then Scott, I'm going to call you the first day you figure that out, and we'll be right there with you. But I guess that's a pretty general question. I think that everything we've been discussing applies, right? I don't know what it's like to live in Europe right now. Clearly the US we're not the ones that should be teaching anybody anything right now regarding COVID, right? We're the laughing stock of the world. So I think that I hope that touring is coming back in Europe. I know that we had a tour that we could have done. The problem was an American couldn't get into Europe. So that's why we canceled our tour in October. If you're already in Europe, then I would say we should be picking your brain. We could be learning from you. Unfortunately, I don't have much to offer there.
Thank you.
We had a seminar just an hour ago from the European music industry side, and I mean, no one's really expecting anything to happen, anyone to tour, as you say, until fall 2021. So
yeah, I wanted to add to that too. You know, Ben's exactly right. If you look at the big bands, like the ones that we were working with now, that's what they're looking at is like summer, fall 21. My point was, and I agree with everything, Ben made some great points. My point is that the key to all of this is testing. Plain and simple, is testing. Because if you test people, regardless if you have a vaccine, because if you test people, okay, and people you bring your infection rate down, you know who's positive, they can quarantine. That's what's going to lead to it. The countries that have been able to move quickly have been the ones that have administered widespread mass super testing that we haven't done in the United States. Yeah. So the key is if it's possible to have an accurate, rapid test so that you can get an answer in a period of time that's manageable for a set of people. Like if you test a set of people and then you got results in 8 hours, I mean, that's almost pointless, right? To your point, they're walking around the parking lot, whatever. But if you can check people as they come in, like you would for an ID, if you will, you know, or temperature checks or whatever. But if you can get an accurate test in a short period of time, that's going to accelerate a lot of stuff in the world. I mean, we're talking about the live music side, and I'm not bullish that it's going to happen next week, but I'm a little more optimistic. I think that by the early spring, late winter, there'll be a technology in place that will allow gatherings of all sorts, whether it's sports, music, you know, whatever. It'll happen quickly, because once that part of the puzzle is solved, it's like a key that opens up a lot of different things. So if I was an artist, American artist in Europe, and my first point was that the people that are taking this time to do things like take care of your publishing, to write, to work with other artists virtually, to co-socialize with other artists and really work on your craft during the downtime, these are the ones that are going to rise to the top. If it's raining outside, don't stay in bed. You know, get up and do some work, make things happen, and that's what's going to rise. That's what's going to cause the sort of the cream to rise to the top. And the silver lining for me is that I've watched more live music on my computer, on my television, than I ever have. I mean, not even close. And I'm a huge music fan. I've seen every music documentary, but I've never watched this much live music ever on my TV and my computer. And I've discovered so many artists. I've discovered more artists in the last, 5 months now than the previous 5 months when I was in the music business and I was seeing, I've discovered more talent. So there's an opportunity for this artist in Europe, American artist in Europe, to really take this time, build your house, build your foundation, get it ready to go. So that when you roll out, somebody goes, well, that guy was amazing. I'm going to go see that person. I'm going to get involved in socially. So Ben, I agree with you, man. Hopefully we can figure out a path going forward.
I'm with you.
I'm very thankful for you to take your time, but we have to end this. It's 45 minutes now and we have to keep going. I'm very happy, and I hope maybe next year we can meet in person. I don't know.
Scott's going to make sure we get there next year.
Yeah, we're working our butts off to make it happen. I mean, it's for everybody.
I mean, there is live music from Sweden, from Live at Heart Festival, starting in an hour. No, it's starting in 50 minutes. So this is why we have to end. And if you want to continue watching music from the Live at Heart Festival, you can stay tuned. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Scott,
thank you, Drew,
and Kim, I really appreciate your time. Okay. Thank you for inviting us.
Be safe, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.